The firelight dances across your face, friend. A warm, soft glow that pushes back the cool desert night. The air smells of dry earth and a hint of wood smoke, carried gently on a breeze that whispers secrets through the palms outside. Lay your head down now. Rest. Let the quiet settle around you, like a cloak woven from the deep velvet darkness. My name is Mary from Magdala, a name that now, when spoken by some, carries a certain weight, doesn't it? A whisper, perhaps, of what I was before I knew him. But when he spoke it, when he spoke Mary, it was just that. My name, clear and bright, like morning light breaking over the Sea of Galilee. Magdala, my home, was a bustling place, full of the scent of fish drying in the sun, the chatter of merchants, the creak of boats on the water, a vibrant tapestry of life, woven with the threads of commerce and community. But for me, for a time, it was a cage. A beautiful cage, perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. Before him, a shadow had fallen over my soul, thick and persistent as the deepest midnight. It wasn't the kind of darkness you could see with your eyes, not like the shadows that stretch long across the market square as evening falls. No, this was an internal gloom, a constant companion that whispered and clawed, distorting every color, muting every sound. They were 7, these spirits. 7 distinct voices, 7 distinct presences, vying for control within the fragile vessel of my being. 7 demons, the scriptures say. A simple phrase, isn't it? Yet, it carries the weight of years. Years of confusion, of despair, of a battle fought not with fists and swords, but with the very essence of my will. Imagine, if you can, trying to live a life, to simply be, when 7 different wills are tugging at your heart, shouting in your mind. One moment, a crushing weight of despair would press upon me, making even the simplest breath feel like a monumental effort. The next, a flash of uncontrollable anger, a fiery heat that would surge through my veins, leaving me trembling and ashamed. My thoughts, my own thoughts, felt foreign, twisted. It was as if my mind was a crowded room, filled with arguing, mocking voices, each one trying to assert its dominance, each one chipping away at who I truly was. My own voice, the soft, quiet voice of Mary, was barely a whisper against the cacophony. Sleep, sweet sleep, was often a stranger. Even when exhaustion finally claimed me, the dreams were rarely peaceful. Fragmented images, sharp, unsettling emotions, a constant undercurrent of dread that would cling to me even after I woke. If waking is even the right word for the state I was in. It was more like shifting from one nightmare into another, a perpetual twilight of the soul. The villagers, they knew. They saw the changes, the haunted eyes, the sudden outbursts, the way I would sometimes stare into nothing, lost in the torment. They would avert their gaze, sometimes with pity, sometimes with fear, sometimes with that particular kind of discomfort that comes from witnessing something they couldn't comprehend, couldn't fix. I remember the feeling of the rough homespun fabric against my skin, the weight of a simple water jar in my hand. But these sensations were often dulled, filtered through a thick veil of internal noise. The taste of bread, the scent of olive oil, the warmth of the sun on my face. They were distant, as if experienced by someone else, someone I barely recognized anymore. Then, the whispers began of a man, a teacher from Nazareth. They said he spoke with authority, not like the scribes. They said he healed the sick, cast out spirits. At first, the voices within me scoffed, dismissive, filled with a bitter cynicism. Another one, they would sneer, another charlatan, another false hope. But a tiny spark, a flicker of something long dormant, stirred within me, a desperate, almost imperceptible yearning for quiet, for peace, for just one moment of stillness within the storm. It was barely there, a fragile thing, easily crushed, yet it persisted. He came to our region, to Magdala. The air seemed to crackle with anticipation, a different kind of energy from the usual market bustle. I could hear the murmuring of the crowds, the eager footsteps, the hushed exclamations. It was unsettling, this new vibration, cutting through the usual drone of my inner torment. I don't remember the exact moment I first saw him. It wasn't a dramatic revelation, not like a clap of thunder. It was more subtle, like the gentle shift in the morning light that signals the dawn. He was speaking, his voice calm and clear, cutting through the clamor of the crowd, and more astonishingly, through the clamor within my own mind. His eyes, they held a depth I had never encountered. Not the quick, assessing glance of a merchant, nor the sympathetic, yet wary, look of a neighbor. No, these eyes saw through the layers, past the surface turmoil, past the manifestations of the torment, straight to the core of me, to the Mary that was still there, buried deep beneath the rubble. And when he spoke, it wasn't a shout or a command barked in anger. It was quiet, firm, undeniable. He simply looked at me, and he spoke. He didn't ask my name. He didn't question my sanity. He just looked, and he knew. I remember a sudden, sharp pain, like something tearing itself free from deep within my bones. A wrenching, a violent expulsion, a sensation of being emptied and filled all at once. The voices shrieked, a chorus of defeated rage, as they were cast out, one by one, into the desolate places from which they came. 7 of them, a chilling realization of the sheer number that had held me captive. Then, silence. A profound, breathtaking silence. It was deafening in its absence, overwhelming in its purity. The world, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, was simply the world. The sounds of the crowd, the rustle of clothing, the distant cry of a bird, they were distinct, separate, no longer distorted by the internal chaos. A breath, a simple, deep breath. The air tasted clean, fresh. My own body felt light, lighter than I had ever known it to be. It was as if a crushing weight had been lifted from my shoulders, from my chest, from the very core of my being. I could feel the blood flowing through my veins, a gentle hum of life, unburdened. And then, a laugh, a soft, unexpected laugh that bubbled up from deep within me. It wasn't a laugh of hysteria or mockery, but one of pure, unadulterated joy. A laugh that tasted of freedom, of release, of the sweet, sweet relief of being whole again. It was my own laugh, a sound I hadn't truly heard in years. My mind, once a battleground, was now a calm, clear pool. My thoughts, my own thoughts, returned to me, like sheep returning to their fold after a long and frightening storm. The world suddenly burst into vibrant color, the blues of the sky, the greens of the trees, the rich browns of the earth. Everything was sharper, brighter, more real. From that moment, my path was clear. How could it not be? He had given me back my life. He had given me back myself. And so, I followed him. Not out of obligation, not out of fear, but out of a devotion so profound, so absolute, it felt like the very air I breathed. I joined the other women who traveled with him, women like Joanna, the wife of Chusa, Herod's household manager, and Susanna, and many others. We shared what we had, our provisions, our resources, to support this new family, this movement that was unfolding before our very eyes. It was a simple, practical way to express the immense gratitude that overflowed within me. We walked dusty roads, the sun warm on our shoulders, the sand gritty beneath our sandals. Each step was a testament, a quiet declaration. The rhythm of our footsteps, the gentle sway of the baskets we carried, the murmured conversations, it all became a part of a new, harmonious existence. I listened to his teachings, hanging on every word. Sometimes he would speak of seeds and sowers and fertile ground. Other times, of lost sheep and prodigal sons and the boundless love of a father. Each story, each parable, was like a gentle rain falling on the parched earth of my soul, nourishing and renewing. I watched him with the sick, the outcast, the broken. I saw the tenderness in his touch, the compassion in his gaze. He didn't just heal bodies, he healed spirits. He didn't just cast out demons, he restored dignity. He saw the inherent worth in every single person, no matter how marred or forgotten they might seem. There was a quiet strength about him, a groundedness that anchored everyone around him. Even in the midst of the most chaotic crowds or the most demanding situations, he carried an inexplicable peace. It was infectious, this peace, seeping into the very fabric of our traveling community. We journeyed from town to town, village to village, across Galilee, through Samaria, and eventually southward towards Judea, towards Jerusalem. The closer we drew to the city, the more palpable the tension became. A subtle shift in the air, a tightening in the atmosphere. I remember the last Passover in Jerusalem. The city was overflowing, a vibrant tapestry of pilgrims from every corner of the world, all converging on the holy city. The smells of roasting lamb, the sound of trumpets, the joyous hymns. It should have been a celebration. But an underlying tremor, a sense of foreboding, was beginning to ripple through our small company. He spoke of betrayal, of suffering, of a cup he must drink. The words were like stones in my stomach, heavy and cold. My mind, so recently freed from its own torment, struggled to comprehend such a path for him, for the one who had brought such light into my darkness. And then it came, the sudden, brutal arrest, the hurried, unjust trials, the swift, horrifying sentence. It unfolded with a terrifying speed, like a nightmare that grips you, pulling you deeper and deeper into its cold embrace, even as you desperately struggle to wake. I was there, at the foot of the cross. How could I not be? My feet, that had followed him across so many miles, refused to move away now. My eyes, that had once been clouded by shadows, refused to close against the terrible sight. The harsh wood, the cruel nails, the agonizing breaths, the screams of the crowd, the jeers of the soldiers, the weeping of the women. The sky itself seemed to weep, turning dark and bruised, as if in mourning for the injustice unfolding beneath its vast expanse. I stood with his mother, Mary, and his mother's sister, and Mary, the wife of Clopas. We clung to each other, a small cluster of grief, our hearts breaking into 1,000 pieces with every gasp he took. The pain was so raw, so deep, it felt as if my very soul was being flayed open. And then, the final breath. A shudder passed through the earth, a deep, resonant tremor that shook the very ground beneath our feet. The air grew still, heavy with unspeakable sorrow. It was over. The light of the world extinguished. They took his body down, carefully, reverently. Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council, bravely asked for the body. Nicodemus, who had once come to Jesus by night, brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 pounds, to prepare him for burial. I watched as they wrapped him in linen cloths with the spices, just as is the custom of the Jews for burial. Every movement was slow, deliberate, each fold of the cloth a silent farewell. My heart ached with a dull, persistent throb. They carried him to a new tomb, hewn out of rock in a garden nearby. A large stone, heavy and unforgiving, was rolled against the entrance, sealing him inside. My gaze lingered on that stone, a cold, hard barrier separating me from the one who had set me free. As the Sabbath approached, the quiet descended, but it was not the peaceful quiet I had come to cherish. This was a heavy, suffocating silence, pregnant with grief and despair. The city, usually vibrant with activity, fell into a hush, as if holding its breath. The women and I returned, heavy-hearted, to our lodging. The law required rest on the Sabbath. No work, no movement beyond what was absolutely necessary. So we rested, but it was a restless rest, a torment of waiting. My mind replayed the events of the day before, over and over, each image a fresh stab of pain. The smell of the spices, the feel of the linen against my fingers, the weight of the stone. These sensations were branded into my memory. But there was also a quiet resolve growing within me, even amidst the crushing sorrow. A need to complete what we couldn't finish before the sun set on that terrible Friday. To properly anoint his body, to pay him the final respects. It was a small thing, perhaps, in the face of such monumental loss, but it felt utterly vital. A last act of devotion, a final expression of love for the one who had loved me into being again. The darkness of that Sabbath night felt longer, deeper, more impenetrable than any night I had ever known. Each passing hour felt like an eternity. I longed for the first hint of light, for the moment the Sabbath would officially end, so I could rise and go. My thoughts kept returning to the tomb, hidden away in that quiet garden. I pictured the stone, the coolness of the rock, the stillness within. A profound sadness, yes, but also a strange, quiet determination, a steady pulse of purpose beneath the waves of grief. I imagined the morning, the soft, pale light of dawn beginning to creep over the eastern hills, the dew on the grass, the birds beginning their hesitant chirps, and my footsteps walking towards that garden, towards that tomb, carrying my small jar of precious spices, my heart heavy, yet resolved. The first hint of dawn, a faint silvering on the horizon, was a welcome relief. It wasn't the triumphant burst of color I had sometimes seen over Galilee, but a hesitant, almost shy illumination, as if the new day itself was uncertain. I rose quietly, my movements practiced and soft, so as not to disturb the others. The air was cool, damp with the morning dew, carrying the faint, earthy smell of the sleeping garden. My small jar of spices felt cool and smooth in my hand, a tangible connection to the task ahead. My heart was a leaden weight in my chest, heavy with the grief of the past days. Yet, beneath that weight, there was a steady thrum, a quiet resolve. I had to go. I had to finish this last act of love, this final anointing. It felt like the only thing left I could do for him. The path to the garden was familiar, though the darkness of the pre-dawn hours made it seem longer, more winding. step I took was deliberate, the soft crunch of sand and small stones beneath my sandals, the only sound breaking the profound stillness. The world felt muted, holding its breath. As I drew closer, a strange unease began to stir within me, a subtle prickling on my skin. It wasn't fear, not yet. More like a discordant note in the symphony of the quiet morning. Something felt different. And then I saw it. The tomb, the great stone, the one that had been rolled so carefully, so definitively, against the entrance. It was moved, not merely shifted, but rolled completely away, lying to the side like a discarded toy. My breath caught in my throat. My mind reeled, struggling to grasp what my eyes were seeing. Panic, sharp and cold, began to unfurl its tendrils within me. Moved? How? Who? 1,000 possibilities, each more terrible than the last, flashed through my mind. Had they desecrated his body? Had his enemies taken him even from the grave? The thought was a fresh agony, a cruel continuation of the torment he had already endured. Without thinking, without even a moment's hesitation, I ran. My feet, so accustomed to gentle walking, now pounded on the path, fueled by a surge of desperate fear and a new, frantic urgency. I didn't even look inside the tomb. The sight of the open entrance was enough. I ran until my lungs burned, until my side ached, until the ground seemed to blur beneath my feet. I knew where the others were staying, the disciples, the men who had been closest to him. Peter, with his booming voice and impulsive heart. John, the beloved, with his quiet wisdom. They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, I cried, my voice hoarse, breathless, barely above a whisper, yet filled with the frantic energy of my despair. And we do not know where they have laid him. I poured out the words, stumbling over them, my voice cracking with unshed tears. Peter, always the first to act, sprang up, his face etched with concern, his eyes wide with disbelief. John, ever calm, yet with a flicker of urgency in his gaze, was right behind him. They set off at a run, Peter's powerful stride eating up the ground, John, younger and perhaps faster, keeping pace. And I, Mary, who had just run with all the desperation of a frightened gazelle, found myself following them, though my legs felt like lead. I watched John outrun Peter, reaching the tomb first. He stooped down, peering inside, but didn't enter. A moment later, Peter arrived, a whirlwind of energy, and without hesitation, he strode right in. Of course, I thought, a bitter, wry observation flashing through my mind, even in that moment of distress. The men always have to be the first to see, the first to investigate. I saw them emerge, their faces a mixture of confusion and wonder. They had seen the linen cloths lying there, and the face cloth, not with the linen cloths, but folded up in a place by itself. John, who had hesitated, now entered too, and he saw, and he believed. But they still didn't understand the scripture, that he must rise from the dead. They spoke in hushed, agitated tones, their voices low and strained. They exchanged bewildered glances, their expressions searching for answers where there were none. Then, just as quickly as they had come, they turned and went back to their own homes, leaving me alone again. They left. They went back. But I couldn't. How could I? My heart felt tethered to that tomb, to the profound emptiness it now held. To go back to where I had been, to the quiet lodging, felt like a betrayal, a surrender to the despair that threatened to engulf me. So I stood outside the tomb, weeping. Hot tears streamed down my face, mingling with the cool morning air. Each sob was a wrenching pain, a physical manifestation of the agony in my soul. I wasn't just crying for him. I was crying for the hope he had brought, for the life he had restored, now seemingly snatched away again. The tears blurred my vision, distorting the world around me. The garden, once a place of quiet beauty, now seemed cold and desolate, mirroring the emptiness within my heart. The spices, still clutched in my hand, felt useless, mocking me with their purpose unfulfilled. As I wept, my grief was so profound that I didn't even notice I was bending down, peering into the tomb through my tears. My eyes, swollen and red, strained to see something, anything, that might explain this unbearable emptiness. And then I saw them. 2 angels, dressed in dazzling white, sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying. One at the head, the other at the feet. Their presence, so unexpected, so ethereal, should have filled me with awe, with fear perhaps. But in my profound grief, I was beyond such reactions. "Woman, why are you weeping?" they asked, their voices gentle, yet clear, cutting through the haze of my sorrow. "Because they have taken away my Lord," I replied, my voice thick with tears, "and I do not know where they have laid him." It was a simple, heartfelt cry, the sum of my agony. My world had been turned upside down, and the one constant, the one who had brought me peace, was gone. I barely registered their presence, their celestial nature. They were simply figures, witnesses to my anguish. My focus, my entire being, was still consumed by the agonizing mystery of his disappearance. My mind was still stuck on the physical absence, the missing body. As I spoke, I turned around, perhaps instinctively, perhaps drawn by some unseen force. The garden was still dim, the sun not yet fully risen above the surrounding hills. And there he was, standing there. But I didn't recognize him, not immediately. My eyes, blurred by tears, saw only a figure, a man standing in the morning light. My mind, still reeling from the shock and the sorrow, leaped to the most obvious explanation in a garden setting. "Sir," I said, my voice still trembling, still raw with tears, "if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." I was so consumed by my mission, by the desperate need to find his body, to complete the anointing, that I couldn't see past the veil of my own expectations. I imagined him, the gardener, perhaps having moved the body for some reason, for some obscure purpose of his own. The idea of carrying his body, even in my weakened state, seemed entirely rational in my grief-stricken mind. I would do anything. He looked at me, his gaze soft, yet piercing. I felt it, even though I didn't recognize it. That familiar depth, that quiet knowing, that way he had of seeing beyond the surface. But my heart was too fractured, my mind too clouded by sorrow, to fully grasp it. And then, he spoke. He simply spoke one word. "Mary." One word. My name. Spoken in that voice, that unmistakable voice, that had once cut through the 7 demons, that had called me back to life, that had spoken peace into my troubled soul. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a command. It was a recognition. A gentle, loving, absolute recognition. And in that one word, everything shifted. The veil of my grief, the fog of my confusion, the despair that had gripped my heart, it all began to dissipate, like mist burning off in the morning sun. The sound of my name, spoken by him, pierced through every layer of sorrow, every shard of pain, every doubt that had taken root in the last few days. It was like a chord struck deep within my being, resonating with a truth I had almost forgotten. My head snapped up, my eyes, still wet with tears, finally focused. And I saw him. Not the gardener, not a stranger, but him, the one, whole, alive, radiant. Rabboni, I cried, the word bursting from my lips, a flood of recognition, of adoration, of overwhelming, incomprehensible joy. Teacher, my Lord, the one who had delivered me, the one who had loved me. It was as if the world tilted back on its axis. The colors in the garden intensified. The birdsong suddenly became clearer, more joyous. The air itself seemed to hum with a divine energy. My heart, once a heavy stone, now soared, light and free, like a bird released from a cage. My immediate instinct was to cling to him, to grasp his feet, to reassure myself that this was real, that he was truly there, tangible, present, to anchor myself to this impossible, glorious reality. But he stopped me, gently. "Do not cling to me," he said, his voice still soft, still filled with that familiar, profound love. "For I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and my God and your God." The words were a gentle redirection, a profound commission. My joy, though boundless, could not be solely for myself. It had a purpose, a message to deliver. He wasn't just here for me, for my own personal relief, though that relief was immense. He was here for all of them, for his brothers, for the world. The sheer audacity of it, to be the first, to be the one chosen to carry this unbelievable news. Me, Mary, from Magdala, the one from whom 7 demons had been cast out. Me, the woman who had stood weeping by an empty tomb, mistaking her Lord for a gardener. It was almost too much to comprehend. A wry smile touched my lips, even through the fresh tears of joy. Oh, the irony. The men, so quick to run, so quick to dismiss, would now hear the greatest news in all of history from my lips. I could almost hear Peter's surprised grunt, John's quiet contemplation. My grief, moments before so consuming, was now transformed. It was not gone, not erased, but transmuted into something new, something glorious. It was the rich soil from which this unbelievable joy had sprung forth. The light in the garden grew stronger now, a golden warmth spreading across the land, bathing everything in a soft, hopeful glow. The dew on the grass sparkled like a million tiny diamonds. The world was awakening, truly awakening, for the first time. I stood there for a moment, just breathing, letting the reality of his presence wash over me, soak into every fiber of my being. The air was filled with an unspeakable lightness, a sense of profound peace that surpassed all understanding. The silence was no longer heavy, but vibrant, alive. My heart felt so full, it threatened to burst. The memory of the darkness, of the 7 demons, faded further into the distant past, a forgotten nightmare replaced by the brightest of dawns. He had truly made all things new. And the mission, go, tell. These simple words held such power. To be a messenger of this incredible, life-altering truth, to carry the news of his resurrection, not as a rumor, not as a distant hope, but as a living, breathing reality. I turned, my feet no longer heavy, but light, almost buoyant. The path that had seemed long and winding just moments before now felt short, direct. Every step was a declaration, every breath a song of praise. I left the garden, not with a heavy heart, but with a heart overflowing, bursting with a joy so profound it was almost painful. The spices, still clutched in my hand, were now irrelevant. The purpose had changed. I was no longer seeking a body to anoint. I was carrying a message of life, of triumph, of everlasting hope. The ultimate anointing had already occurred, not with oils and perfumes, but with the very power of God. I walked towards where the disciples were gathered, my pace quickening with each step. The sun was fully risen now, painting the sky with hues of gold and rose. The world was alive, and so was I, and so was he. My feet, which had been so heavy with grief, now seemed to float over the ground. Each step was a quiet drumbeat of joy, echoing the joyous thrumming in my heart. The path back to the others, which had felt like an endless stretch of despair just moments before, now seemed to shrink, eager to carry me to my destination. The morning air, once cool and damp, felt exhilarating, crisp with the promise of a new day, a new beginning. The smells of the garden, the damp earth, the blooming flowers, the subtle sweetness of the awakening world were no longer tinged with sorrow, but imbued with a fresh, vibrant essence. I could feel the message burning within me, a sacred fire, eager to be shared. Go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and my God and your God. His words, so clear, so specific, resonated in my mind, guiding my every movement. When I reached the place where the disciples were gathered, the atmosphere was still thick with sorrow and confusion. Their faces were drawn, their eyes heavy with unshed tears and the exhaustion of their grief. They sat huddled together, a picture of despair, lost in their own quiet suffering. I have seen the Lord, I burst out, my voice ringing with an uncontainable joy, a stark contrast to the somber stillness of the room. My words tumbled out, eager and breathless, mixing with the lingering tears on my face, now tears of pure, radiant happiness. I told them everything, about the empty tomb, the angels, my mistake with the gardener, and then that single, glorious word, Mary, and the recognition, the overwhelming joy, the commission to go and tell. I could see the skepticism flicker in their eyes, particularly in Peter's. A woman's testimony, after all, was not always given the same weight. Oh, the exasperating, endearing blindness of men, I thought with a gentle internal chuckle, a hint of that clever wit returning even in this profound moment. Always needing to see for themselves, always needing the logic, the proof. These words seemed to them an idle tale, Luke would later write, and they did not believe her. I knew it, even as I spoke. Their grief was a heavy curtain, their expectations of death and finality a thick wall. How could they, in their logical minds, grasp such an illogical, miraculous truth? But I persisted. My conviction was too strong, my experience too real, too vivid to be dismissed. I had seen him. I had heard him. He had spoken my name, and in that name, he had called me back to life, again. Gradually, a flicker of something new began to stir in their faces. A hesitant hope, a dawning wonder, a fragile crack in the edifice of their despair. Perhaps it was the sheer force of my conviction. Perhaps it was the undeniable joy radiating from my very being, which spoke louder than any words. Later that day, he appeared to them too. And then, finally, they believed. But it was my voice, a woman's voice, that had been the first to carry the good news. It was my heart, so recently broken, that had been chosen to hold this impossible, glorious secret until it could be fully shared. The days that followed were a whirlwind of wonder, of awe, of a joy so profound it was almost dizzying. He appeared to them again and again, solidifying the truth of his resurrection, preparing them for the work ahead. Each appearance was a reaffirmation, a gentle unfolding of this new, glorious reality. I watched them, these men who had followed him so faithfully, now transformed from broken, fearful disciples into men filled with a quiet power, a profound understanding. The fear that had gripped them, that had sent them scattering, was slowly replaced by an unwavering courage. And I, Mary, continued to follow, to listen, to serve. My life was no longer defined by the darkness of the past, by the 7 demons that had held me captive. It was defined by the light, by the one who had called my name, by the one who had conquered death itself. My story, in a way, is a journey from the deepest shadows to the brightest dawn, from being unseen, unheard, lost in the clamor of internal torment, to being truly seen, truly heard, and entrusted with the most profound message ever spoken. Sometimes I sit by the Sea of Galilee, the gentle waves lapping at the shore, and I reflect. I remember the smell of the fish, the sound of the boats, the bustling market of Magdala, and I remember the suffocating darkness that had once enveloped me. And then I remember his voice, that clear, calm, undeniable voice speaking my name. Mary. It still echoes in the quiet corners of my heart, a constant reminder of deliverance, of love, of new life. It taught me that even in the deepest despair, even when your heart is shattered and your vision is blurred by tears, he is there. He sees you. He knows your name. He knows you. He doesn't ask for credentials or for perfection. He simply asks for a willing heart, for a spirit that yearns for freedom, for a soul that recognizes his voice. And when he speaks your name, everything changes. It's a simple truth, isn't it? Yet so profound, that the creator of the universe, the Lord of all life, knows your name. And when he calls it, he calls you to something new, something beautiful, something eternal. So, friend, let the quiet settle around you now. Let the warmth of this fire chase away any lingering chill, any shadows that might cling to your heart. The night deepens, but remember the dawn always follows. Your thoughts, your worries, your racing mind, let them drift away like smoke rising gently into the vast, silent heavens. There is peace here, in this moment, in this quiet space. He knows your name, just as he knew mine. He sees the burdens you carry, the quiet longings of your heart, the unspoken prayers of your spirit, and he is here, always. May your sleep be peaceful and deep, like still waters reflecting the stars. May your dreams be filled with light and comfort, a gentle balm for your soul. And may you rest in the profound, unwavering love of the one who calls you by name and who brings light into every darkness. Sleep now, beloved. Sleep in his peace. Good night.